So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association meeting. My name is Richard Close, and we have a very important meeting today with the sheriff as a speaker. We also have other speakers that are very interesting as to what's happening in Sherman Oaks, what's happening in the valley and the city. With that, I'd like to ask the members of the board of directors to introduce themselves. We'll start in, let's see, alphabetical order. Matt.
I'm Matt Epstein. I'm Vice President of Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association.
Okay. And Jules.
I'm Jules Fear, Vice President of the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association.
Where were you
Proud
today?
member.
Where were you today?
Wait a minute. Proud member of the association for the past 23 years, and I'm also honorary mayor of Sherman Oaks. Today, I was at the grand opening of Pavilions Market in Sherman Oaks, which was a beautiful, beautiful market. And Richard was there with me, and so was Jay Weitzler.
And did they give us a gift to a number of nonprofits, including the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association?
Yes.
Excellent. We thank them very much.
They did. Very generous.
Is Tom Glick on?
I am on. I'm here doing something with my daughter, so I'm going to mute my face so it's not a distraction. I'm Tom Glick. I'm a board member, and I'm going to go to mute. Thanks.
Okay. John Eisen.
Hi, John Eisen. I'm the treasurer of the association.
Okay. Maria.
Hi, Maria Pavlu-Calban. I'm chair of the legislative committee.
Are you going to talk a little bit later?
I am.
About?
Housing bills, always.
Okay, great. Is Marshall on? Okay. Nancy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nancy Segoyan, a board member. Just a quick thought about membership and how important membership is. We are nonprofit, volunteer run, and 100% membership supported. So if you're not a member, please consider joining SOHA. We work on major issues. Your membership includes a monthly newsletter with updates. And, you know, it's a small investment that pays a huge dividend in protecting our quality of life here in Sherman Oaks. So you can join by going to ShermanOaks914.com. You can become a member online, or you can email me if you have a question at joinsoha@gmail.com. So join us. Thank you.
Jay.
Hi, I'm Jay Weitzler. I'm secretary of the organization. I'm also a member of the Hillside Federation, and I wanted to let you know that we should give a great big thank you to Representative Adam Schiff, who in 2017, you know how fast things move in Washington. In 2017, he introduced legislation to greatly expand the land that we have surrounding Los Angeles in the mountains. And as a result of that, we have 161,000 new acres that are going to be added to the Santa Monica Preservation Area. And this area is going to extend through from the Simi Hills, the Verdugo Mountains, the San Gabriels, and really surround the valley on the northwest and the east side. So we'll have wonderful, wonderful places to go, to hike, to fish and camp, or whatever you like to do, and protect the animals that are so near and dear to us. So thanks to Adam Schiff for doing that.
Thank you. And now we'll go on to some of our speakers that will be speaking after the sheriff. First is George Gascon.
Hello, good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure being here this morning. And Sheriff, just want to extend my deepest, sentiments for you and the Sheriff family. My wife and I are praying for your family.
Okay. And George, you'll be speaking later. Is there a special reason you're on the webinar today?
Yes, I am going to be speaking about my campaign and some of the work that I hope to do if I were to be elected.
And you're a candidate for district attorney, correct?
Thank you so much, Richard. Absolutely. I am a candidate for District Attorney of LA County.
Okay. Next, Captain Lopez. Okay. Jose Saldana.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. And our deepest condolences also for the sheriffs here from LAPD, Van Nuys, and the whole entire LAPD division. Are we going to be talking about the crime stats right now, or just introducing myself right now?
Introduce, and then
Yeah.
we'll, and maybe what is your physical jurisdiction?
Sure. I am the senior lead officer for the Sherman Oaks area, the southern portion of Sherman Oaks. So basically, I cover everything south of Ventura towards Mulholland, between Coldwater Canyon and Sepulveda Boulevard. So that's my jurisdiction. That's my area that I cover, that I'm in charge of with the community.
Okay. Next is Andy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Solomon. I'm the neighborhood prosecutor for the Van Nuys division. That includes Sherman Oaks. So I work a lot with the community and the senior lead officers and all city agencies to solve a lot of problems. And we'll be on later. Thank you.
Brad.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Fingard. I am the Sherman Oaks Field Deputy for Los Angeles City Council member David Rue.
And Gordon.
I am Gordon Morris. I am the concierge of the brand new, opened again, pavilions in Sherman Oaks. And I can't wait to talk about it. We're so happy to be here.
Richard, do you want to go back to Captain Lopez, if he unmutes himself? No? Okay, never mind.
Okay. With that, I'd like to introduce the sheriff of Los Angeles County. And as everyone has indicated, oh, there he is. I see before. Captain Lopez?
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, I am Captain Rudy Lopez. I am the newest person to join Van Nuys Station. I'm the commanding officer of Van Nuys Patrol, and I will be speaking a little bit later about myself and what I plan on doing in Van Nuys. Nice to be here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, we want to go to the sheriff, Alex Villanueva. And as people have indicated previously, our thoughts and prayers with the two deputies that were shot in Compton. Also, it's interesting, I was reflecting back, we've had the following sheriffs speak at the association. Jim McDonald, Lee Baca a number of times, Sherman Block, and Peter Pitches. So we go back a number of years with the sheriffs. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the Los Angeles County Sheriff, Alex Villanueva.
Oh, well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speaking to this group. And I've had the opportunity to actually meet Peter Pitches before he passed away, and that was the day that Lee Baca was sworn in. I was on stage as a member of the Academy staff, and they wheeled him in a wheelchair, and it was quite the moment, history there. And unfortunately, a month later, he ended up passing away himself. Between him and Sherman Block, a lot of history there between those two combined. And anyway, now that it's 2020, I'm here as sheriff. It's tough times. We're dealing with a lot of things at the same time. We have obviously the COVID-19 pandemic. We have civil unrest. We have the defunding law enforcement movement. We have the budget crisis, the economy, all the shuttered businesses, and a lot of challenges, a lot of suffering out there in so many different ways in the community. So we're working hard in the Sheriff's Department to engage with the community. We're shifting our model from an enforcement model, which was the old warrior mindset, to the engagement model and the guardian model, so to speak. And that is a cultural shift for the organization. And as we're working through it, we're doing a lot of things to reform the department, and we're on the right track. And I campaign on reform, rebuild, restore. And that's what we've accomplished. We now have the body-worn cameras starting in October, finally, after a lot of fights to get that to happen. So things are progressing. We have a transparency portion of our website that is dedicated to pushing everything out that we legally can to the public. So we definitely want to make sure transparency promotes accountability and promotes understanding with the community. And there's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of bad information floating around there, particularly social media. As you know, anything can be said on social media, and there's going to be a segment of the population that's going to just believe and run with it. And so we have to guard ourselves constantly, make sure people have the accurate information as quickly as possible. And with that being said, I just want to give you an update on the status of the 2 deputies. The female deputy is still in intensive care, and she has some serious issues that is going to take some time. And but she's on the path to recovery. And the male deputy has been removed from ICU to a normal hospital bed now, and we're trying to get him released from the hospital. But we have to arrange for proper care for him and rehabilitation. There'll be obviously some more surgeries in line for both of them. It's going to be a long, slow process, but thankfully they were spared any injury to vital organ, and I think they're going to be all right in the long run. And the outpouring of support from across the entire nation has been wonderful, from both President Trump, from Vice President Biden, and everyone has reached out. The governor, Secretary of State, the Attorney General's office, the mayor's office, and elected leaders from across the spectrum. And it's very touching. The reward figure now for to catch in the coward is over $300,000. And a GoFundMe account has been set up for the 2 deputies to pay for their considerable expenses. That's now crossed over the $500,000 mark in just a span of 3 days. It's just remarkable. So good things are happening, but that particular incident illustrates how everything can unfold, because the ambush happened, and then there was protesters at the hospital chanting for the deputies to die. And then on top of that, I just learned today that at the command post that was formed, after the shooting occurred, turns out that 8 tested positive for COVID-19. So now I have 8 deputies that are COVID-19 positive and being treated. So it's a challenge within a challenge everywhere we turn, and that's just par for the course for 2020. So having said that, we're going to keep pushing forward, keep serving the community, and definitely I want to hear from Sherman Oaks. So I'll turn it back to you if there's any questions or any.
Okay, thank you. Matt, if you could unmute yourself. And if you can explain the procedures to the audience for questions.
Okay, so we have a lot of questions that have come in before the call tonight, and we've had a lot of questions that are coming in right now. We're gonna narrow down the types of questions, and we're actually going to unmute some of the folks so you will actually be able to ask the sheriff the questions yourself. If you start going down a path that isn't in the question that you actually asked, then we will mute you and go on with the call. Some of you folks are also logged on as without names, anonymous, and those calls we may ask a question or two of those, but we will not unmute you because we don't know who is anonymous. And also there's some of the questions that are starting to come in have to deal with things that the sheriff does not deal with. So those questions will not be answered. And in addition to that, we will not have time for all the calls or all the questions. And it's not because your question isn't the absolute best, but it's because Richard will at some point give me the hook and not allow me to ask any more questions. So with that, I believe, Bob, you've got Jay, who's one of our board members, who's going to be unmuted and ask the first question.
Unmute and go ahead, Jay. Jay's not responding, Matt.
Okay, then Bob, why don't you go why don't you go to your question, because you were.
There we go. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. Sheriff, I'd like to ask you a question regarding something that you mentioned a moment ago, and that's transparency. There's a couple of issues that have come up, and it'll come as no great surprise to you. There are very high-profile issues recently. The one about the shooting of Andres Guardado and the shooting of Dijon Kizzy. Now, with young Mr. Guardado, that event happened, what, about 3 months ago, and still there's been nothing released, to my knowledge, by your office about what happened and why it happened. And I have to tell you that if that would have been somebody in the private sector, they already would be well into court with whatever proceeding might come as a result. And with Mr. Kizzy, I don't understand why the sheriff won't at least release some information. For example, I'm a bicyclist. We know that we can be stopped for vehicle code violations, but it doesn't happen very often. So it is kind of curious that he was stopped. What's the problem with opening up the Guardado information? The only thing we know is as a result of his family's performing an autopsy. And with Kizzy, why isn't there the most basic information? Because it's our fear that when the sheriff doesn't release the most fundamental information, this is the height of non-transparency. So I'd like you to address those two issues, that issue.
All right, that's a very valid question and a very important one. And transparency is definitely, it's a fundamental issue, which is, of course, when they framed the Constitution, it wasn't even an issue what transparency meant. But today, transparency is very, very important. I hold transparency as a cornerstone of my administration and my reform efforts. And however, it can't come at the expense of the integrity of a criminal investigation. And a classic example of that is the investigation of the shooting of Andres Guardado. When first the family released the autopsy results, and then the Inspector General forced the coroner, pressured the coroner into releasing the autopsy results, we had not yet had interviewed the single most important person, the deputy involved who used deadly force. So when you release the autopsy results, you're tainting the process of interviewing this person. And to put it bluntly, well then, if the person had a very shady reason or criminal intent in doing what they did, all they have to do is match the story with the holes, and then you basically assisted them. And that then you can see where the due process for the victim, if it's a criminal act, does not help. So that was a very bad idea. The point is we want to release the autopsy results after we interview all the key players. Very, very important. Just yesterday afternoon, we interviewed the last deputy in the Dijon Kizzy case. So hopefully this week we're going to release all the information on the Dijon case. And then on the Guardado case, we've already had, I think, 3 or 4 press conferences. We've released all the information we have to date. Unfortunately, some people don't like the information released, and they don't like the facts, because the facts don't fit the narrative they've already painted in their head. But the facts are what they are. They speak for themselves. So we have to move forward with the facts, and I'll keep this bear in mind when you're asking about transparency. Since I've been in office, we've initiated 59 criminal investigations against our employees. 59. 14 of those have resulted in filings by the DA in court. The balance is either currently still under investigation or it become unfounded or unresolved. So we are definitely holding people accountable. These deputy involved shooting investigations are treated like every single homicide investigation. You don't get to skip any process. You don't get to cut corners. And just to satisfy the public's curiosity, you don't get to jeopardize integrity of the investigation. Unfortunately, social media, the news cycle, is operating a lot faster than the actual process of conducting the investigation. So as we can release it, we're going to release everything. And we have a lot of information to release on the Kizzy case. And so that'll satisfy, hopefully, the public's curiosity about what happened there.
All right, thank you. The next question is from Latora. Latora asked a couple questions, but the question that I want you to focus on is the question about the wearing, sheriffs wearing masks. Latora, you on?
Yes.
Okay, you want to ask your question about the masks? Okay. Anyway, what her question is, why is it so hard for the sheriff's departments to wear the masks? Why isn't
Can you hear me?
Why isn't it mandated?
Well, the masks are mandated, and we're pushing deputies to wear them. We've improved the compliance rate. Before it was spotty at best. Now the majority of deputies are wearing the mask, particularly in public. My battle more is the people in enclosed buildings. They're still not wearing the mask, but it's improving, and it's a work in progress. And I think particularly deputies working patrol, those that are working in the different formations that involves the protests with all the gear they're wearing. Some of them may feel claustrophobic carrying 40 pounds of gear. And on top of it, the mask, the helmet, and everything. Not easy, but still, we want to push them to wear the mask because it's very important. Not just for their safety, but for the safety of everyone else around them.
Well, they're actually telling me that they don't have to wear the
Okay.
mask.
Okay. You want to respond to that?
Well, they have to wear the mask, and we made that painfully obvious. And we're holding our unit commanders accountable for that. So if that's the case, if someone tells you that, please let us know that. Go through the watch commander of the station involved, and we'll definitely correct that.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question is from Andrew regarding the wearing of body cameras. Andrew, you should be unmuted.
I'm here.
You want to ask your question about the body cameras?
Yeah, I'm curious because many departments, in fact, have body cams already. And in fact, the problem is many officers can easily turn off their body cams. How are you going to ensure that these officers actually properly record these incidents?
Well, we've already created a policy that mandates that they have to use the body cams, turn them on when they're doing any type of investigative stop. When they're responding to any critical incident or priority call, they have to turn on the body camera. So when we go to look for the body camera and it's not turned on, well, they're going to face the consequences for that, and they can face discipline for that. But the body cameras are there to protect them and the public, so it's in their best interest to have them turned on.
Okay. The next question is from Bob Anderson. Bob, you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, Sheriff. How are you? We
not too bad.
We read a lot in the newspaper and here on the news about gangs inside the sheriff's department. We heard about it before, with the prior sheriff, and I think we even heard about it with Sheriff Baca. The public gets a little nervous about that. Could you comment on it, what you're doing to look into it, things like that?
Yes, we're doing a lot. In fact, we're doing what the previous sheriff should have done and they didn't do at the time. First, we created a policy that explicitly bans the formation and participation in any group with any type of a symbol, be it a tattoo or any unifying symbol that harms the public or harms employees of the department. So that action is just not tolerated, period. So that was a very important first step. When I took office, the Kennedy Hall fight at East LA had already happened about 2 months prior to me taking office. And we had a criminal investigation to do. We interviewed dozens of people. We submitted the case to the DA's office. The DA rejected the case because it boiled down to the potential criminal actions of 4 deputies. From that, once they rejected the case, we could initiate an administrative case. That started in February, right when the pandemic hit. But in spite of that, they worked a long, long time, a lot of hours. They interviewed over 70 employees. And this is over 3,000 pages of evidence they put together. And I announced, I think about a month ago, we're disciplining 26 employees with suspensions all the way up to terminations for their conduct associated with the events that happened in East LA. So the point is we're holding our employees accountable. A lot of the information about deputy gangs, unfortunately, is a manipulation of attorneys who are suing the department. They have to make it sound as big as possible to the benefit of their client. But unfortunately, the facts are not there to support it. Do we have occasionally problems with groups of deputies that cross the line? Mostly it's almost the antics of a college fraternity. They get drunk, they get stupid, they get fight with each other. That has been the typical situation you've seen. That was true with the Quiet Cannon fight. I think that was during Baca's years, Kennedy Hall during McDonald's years. And that has been the case all the way up to today, including the incident that happened in Compton at the earlier part of the year. And now we're doing an investigation on that on Compton. Case in point on Compton, that term executioner was apparently created by an attorney, because we can't find anybody in the department who calls himself that, has used that name in any way, shape, or form in any written way. And it looks like during a deposition, the attorney actually created that term and asked, are you a member of this group? So we have to be able to separate fact from fiction. When we have the facts, we take action. And I removed 36 people from East LA Station, transferred them out because they were part of the problem in East LA. My first day in office, December 3rd of 2018, the very first act I did was relieve the unit captain of his command, the commander of East LA Station. And I transferred him out because I had no faith in his ability to lead the station. So I take this seriously. I expect all of my captains and my patrol stations and any unit on the department to, one, run their ship, run it well, and hold their employees accountable. And we're doing that now.
Okay. The next one is Marla regarding homelessness issues.
Could you read my question for me, please?
Sure, be happy to. Is there a way that you can address the homelessness that's creeping into neighborhoods, including the trash, the violence, the fires, and the lack of safety during the day as well as the night? What is your department doing?
Well, our department, we have the Homeless Outreach Service Team. That's Lieutenant Jeffrey Diedrich. He's now become somewhat of a national expert on homeless. There was concerns when the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority was first formed, and you have Measure Triple H and Measure H at the county and the city level. All those funds, they didn't want anything to go to law enforcement because we were going to be bad and start arresting the homeless. Nothing of that sort happened. It turns out our deputies are out in the field making contact with the homeless. They're going to all the places that most of our civilian personnel that offer services are afraid to go, and they're the ones that establish rapport with a lot of the homeless population. And they've saved lives during this COVID-19 pandemic. They were handing out masks, hygiene kits. They were convincing the vulnerable that were really resistant to services to take shelter and accept medical services. I believe a few months ago, they got one guy 20-year homeless. They finally convinced him to take shelter, and now he's got a permanent residence. So that is, sometimes it's a very long process to get people out of homelessness. The bigger concern is, and this is a problem we're all going to face, not just law enforcement. How do we turn off the source of the homelessness from people becoming homeless? Because we can continue finding a housing for the current homeless because we know that's a fixed amount. But if I take 66,000 off the street and it's replaced by another 66,000, I really haven't improved the situation. And that is a big challenge. And I've yet to hear how we're going to handle that, because it speaks to a broader problem that makes people uncomfortable in the reality that people are falling through our social, our safety net, and there's nothing to catch them, and they wind up out on the streets. And my heart goes out to them, and we got to find a way to do it that doesn't attract more people to the problem.
Hey, Sheriff, let me do a follow-up on that, just my own observation. You say you've got a homelessness czar that's in charge of the homelessness within the Sheriff's Department. You know, we've had speakers from LAPD, we've had speakers from the different council offices, we've had speakers from the different county offices. The one thing that never seems to be happening in our community is a coordination between the departments. The Sheriff's Department working with LAPD, working with the county, working with the VA. There's the head's not talking to the tail. And you know, I know you guys are doing what you need to do, kind of on a reactive basis, as well as all the other folks. But why isn't there a glue? Why isn't there a common, you know, why aren't you guys working together as far as departments to help the citizens put some closure on this homelessness?
Well, there's a lot more going on that we're working together that meets the eye. For example, the Los Angeles County Chiefs of Police Association, they have some of the grant money that goes towards funding their own host teams. And we work in conjunction with, for example, the city of Long Beach and all the cities that go along the San Gabriel riverbed, the corridor that parallels the freeways. So we're working hand in hand with all these agencies. We work hand in hand with Caltrans, for example, LASA, Department of Mental Health. So there's a lot of co-response models going on, and we are working together across boundaries. The tricky part is jurisdictional sometimes, and I agree with you there. There could be better working together, but in terms of multidisciplinary, that is going on very well. However, for example, the LA Homeless Service Authority, I spoke with the head of that agency a few months ago. He said, well, we managed to house, I think, 20,000 people in 2019. But the problem grew that much bigger, as you know, by the homeless count. So the challenge is far bigger than the solutions we have to date. And until we make a solution that's bigger than the challenge, it's going to continue to grow. And that, I don't have an answer for that without getting into a big philosophical debate about how people become homeless. And rising rents, properties, medical crisis, for example, being laid off because the shifting global economy is claiming a lot of victims of a traditional economy that's no longer what it used to be. So there's so many ways we can approach this. And unfortunately, I'm kind of left holding the bag at the county level because every single supervisor of their districts, they're going to fight for the little resources of their district. But going from county to the city level, as you can see, the coordination is not as good as it could be. And I agree with you on that, Matt.
All right, well, hopefully some point soon, the departments will figure out some way to all work together and get this done a lot quicker. The next question that we've got is from Eileen. Your mic should be open, Eileen.
I think I'm open.
You are open. You want to ask your question to the sheriff?
Yes. Your last answer gave me an insight into what you're facing with trying to work with other county organizations, city organizations. But I've been fascinated with hearing about Medford, Oregon's use of an organization for mental illness, because I think you face a lot of people in trying to do your work who have mental illness. And Medford, Oregon has turned to an organization that is knowledgeable on mental illness, that removes from the police departments and the sheriff's departments dealing with people with mental illness. And I'm wondering if you have ever had any discussions with Medford, Oregon on how they're dealing with this, because they're having some real success.
Well, we do have our mental evaluation teams as part of a co-response model, and we're pairing up deputies with clinicians. And these are mental health clinicians. They're not in uniform, they're not in a radio car, and this co-response model has been very successful in not using law enforcement as a tool. And their limitation is one that we definitely need to work with the county. The bed capacity to treat short-term mental illness things, the 72-hour psychiatric beds, those are in extremely short supply. And you'll have a deputy will lose an entire shift trying to find a bed for someone who desperately needs 72-hour hold, does not need a jail bed. And a lot of times there's nowhere to take them, and then you don't want to return them back to the same problem that they just left that called them in the first place. So that is a big challenge. We also have an extreme lack of psychiatric hospitals. We have Metro State Hospital, we have Patton, and I think Lancherman is closed now. So those long-term beds that we need in big institutions, they should have been growing as the homeless population mushroomed. Estimated 70% of our homeless population suffers from some form of mental illness, yet the resources that we need to treat them are not there. If we increase the bed capacity in all these places, we'll find a way to get them there. And we can work with the LA Homeless Service Authority in partnership with them to get them there, but there's no place to go to. That is our biggest challenge right now. Physically, there's no place to go to. There's a lot of NIMBYism. Nobody wants a homeless shelter in their neighborhood. We've seen it. We saw it with Santa Ana when they cleared their riverbed trail. All the uproar with their Grand Park and temporarily relocating the homeless there. So there's a lot of challenges, and I'll be more than happy to look at what Oregon is doing. It's just the scale thing is always going to be a challenge. When people realize the size of our problem, it just, it really scares people.
Okay. The next question is from Nancy regarding the rehiring of some of your deputies.
Nancy,
Yes, I'm here. Sheriff, early on in your tenure, there was a lot of media attention on your rehiring some of your officers. And I just wondered how you've dealt with that since and how you justify rehiring people who had been fired, I believe, for cause. Maybe you can let us know some of your, justifications for doing so.
I thank you for that question. It's a very important question. When I took office, part of my platform, Reform, Rebuild, Restore, is that we have to guarantee due process. I can't support wrongful convictions or wrongful terminations. They're both evil twins right there. And under my predecessor, he increased terminations by roughly 400%. However, there wasn't a 400% increase in bad conduct from department members. So with that huge increase, there was a lot of bad decisions made. I inherited 66 wrongful termination lawsuits, 66. Each one on average cost me $500,000 plus. And right now, just last month, I received a decision at the appellate court level where the county challenged the decision all the way to the appellate court and lost. And now I have to pay a deputy 4 years of back pay. I have to pay over $500,000 in attorney fees. It comes out of my budget. Wrongful terminations are just bad policy, bad leadership, and bad for the taxpayer. So we rehired this many people, 6, and they were all on the basis of wrongful terminations, including the famous one that you heard all about, Carl Mandoyan. That case was, from the very start, was a wrongful termination. The facts did not support termination. McDonald's own executive said it was not a termination case, but one individual decided to make it a termination case and everybody else just kind of looked the other way. So that's the stuff that I inherited. We had 3 cases in civil service that the Civil Service Commission ordered us to rehire the deputies because they were wrongfully terminated. We had a case that was an expiration of the statute of limitations. This is the stuff we're working with. During the same time period that I brought those 6 back, I have now terminated 60 individuals the right way with facts. So you have to do your investigation first, and then if the facts meet it, then you do the termination. You don't fire first and ask questions later. And that's what got us into trouble. However, my political opponents on the board saw this as a great opportunity. I was 1 month into office and they were already hiring an attorney to sue me. No one in their right mind would hire an attorney to sue a brand new elected person into office until they exhausted all other alternatives. The problem was they didn't want to accept the fact that the previous administration engaged in some serious misconduct with employee investigations. And that we have the evidence, we laid it out, we presented it to the board. They just did not want to hear it at all because the assumption was, and as you said yourself, ma'am, they were terminated for cause. They were not. That is the problem. That's why they came back. Now, if someone was terminated for cause, by all means, they remain terminated. In fact, I'm troubled by 14 terminations that were brought back from the previous administration that I wouldn't have brought back. I'm really concerned about them because I'm stuck with them as employees. And what do I do with them? I can't refire them after they're brought back. So it makes it very awkward. So what we're doing now, we're setting the record straight. If the facts are there, we terminate. If the facts are not there, then we have to go to either lesser discipline or there's no discipline at all. But that is part of due process. That's my obligation as a leader and also as someone who has a fiduciary responsibility with the county resources, that I can't engage in administrative misconduct because I have an agenda. I have to go by facts. And hopefully that explains where we're at. And at some point, that 66 lawsuits is whittled down to about 39 now, but I'm still stuck with 39 bad cases that we're going to see how we can resolve them. That's going to cost the taxpayers the least amount of money.
All right. I am getting the hook from Richard because.
Hey, Matt, any chance I could say a quick question?
Hold on, please, Jules. No, thank you. We have one other person who's going to be queued up, and again, if we have the time, but we have to respect the sheriff. He's got previous commitments as well. So the next speaker who's in queue is Reggie Watkins. Are you unmuted, Reggie?
I am unmuted. How are you guys doing this evening?
You have a question for the sheriff?
Yes, I do. My name is Reggie Watkins. I'm a co-founder of the Valley of Change protest that is daily at the Sherman Oaks Gallery in front of the Cheesecake Factory. We are there every day peacefully, holding signs, standing up for what we believe in. And we'd like to send our condolences to the sheriffs who were in this unfortunate altercation. I would like to ask you, Sheriff, just the other day, I saw you mentioned asking for reward money from LeBron James to help with catching this criminal. I'd like to know if you've ever asked a white celebrity for reward money when a white person has, or anybody has shot a sheriff.
Well, this is the first time I've been in a position of asking for reward money. And I challenged LeBron James only because of comments he made. He's a person of great influence in the community. And I'm a diehard Laker fan. I'm a big LeBron supporter. But he made some comments that were, I thought, casting a very broad brush on the entire profession and the perceptions of the entire African-American community that I thought were kind of problematic and symptomatic of the entire celebrities, entertainers, politicians. So he was well suited to actually address that. Doc Rivers, on the other hand, had a different perspective than he did, and I really admire what Doc Rivers had to say, both now as a result of the challenge and before. So I'm not sure where you're going with a white person or not, but if a white person made that same comment and they were that big of an influence, well, then I would direct it towards that person. So it is what it is, and fortunately, other people have stepped up in the void, and the reward has been climbing and climbing. I think now I just got a new update. I haven't even read it yet, but it's way past 300,000. We have a GoFundMe account for the deputies. It's past 500,000 mark, and that's incredible in just 3 days. The whole nation has come together behind this, and this is my challenge to, not my challenge, but my message to LeBron James and the entire nation is this. We have to reject violence in all its forms. We have to hold each other one personally accountable for the decisions they make. And that means, are we escalating, de-escalating? Are we creating conflict or resolving conflict? That includes law enforcement when we're trying to figure out what to do with someone we're trying to either cite, arrest, detain, whatever the case may be, or someone who's facing the citation, detention, arrest by law enforcement. You can't do it violently. You can't engage in an armed conflict. And there's a proper way to resolve conflict where we'll talk peacefully and figure out who was in the wrong, and then we move forward as a community. And that is my goal as a leader of the Sheriff's Department and the profession of law enforcement. I think that's everyone's goal moving forward. Let's start talking. Let's figure out how we can get everybody working together. And I've had wonderful responses from Compton in particular, from religious leaders of faith in Compton, in Linwood, and throughout the county. So we're off to a very encouraging start. This is going to be an ongoing dialogue. And lastly, I want to hire. Heck, I'll hire you if you qualify and you're interested. So we're hiring locally. We're not hiring out of state. We want the department to be a reflection of Los Angeles County's diverse community.
All right, thank you, Sheriff. Richard, you want to take over from here?
Yes. I want to thank the sheriff very much for spending time with us. I know you're very busy, and I told your staff that 8 o'clock we'd be able to let you go, and it's exactly 8 o'clock. So once again, thank you very much, and we really appreciated your time and your answers. Thank you.
Well, thank you all, and thank you for everyone who asked for a question. I appreciate the input from everybody. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. So let's, George Gascon, if we can unmute him. He is the candidate for district attorney.
Richard?
Yes.
Also, while George is unmuting himself, the audience members, if depending on how long George is going to speak for, but we may have an opportunity to ask a couple questions. So if you do want to go ahead, I will be monitoring the questions as well. So if you have a specific question for George, fire away.
Okay. So George is the candidate for sheriff, not sheriff, for district attorney, November 3rd. And his opponent is Jackie Lacey, the current district attorney. And as I understand it, you were the district attorney in San Francisco. You were the sheriff or police chief or whatever up in San Francisco, chief of police. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Also, you were one of the top individuals at the Los Angeles Police Department. So if you could just, introduce yourself, and the real question is, why is there a need for a change in district attorney?
Yeah, and first of all, thank you so much, Richard. And you're absolutely right. I grew up in LA. I spent nearly 30 years in the LAPD. I rose from the rank of patrol officer to assistant chief heading operations, which during my time, that used to be all the patrol, all the detective functions. And actually the last full year that I was the running operations under Bill Bratton, we lowered violent crime in the city by 27%. In fact, I spent my entire life providing safety for communities. I was the assistant chief, as I said, in the LAPD. I was the chief of police in Mesa, Arizona. I was the chief of police in San Francisco, and I was the district attorney for nearly 9 years in San Francisco County before returning home. As I mentioned to people, I've spent an entire life making communities safe, and primarily here in LA County. And there's a reason why I have the support, not only of the Democratic Party and the LA Times, but also have the support of people like Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris, Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Governor Newsom, and I can go on and on and on. The reality of the reason why I have this support is because in every position that I have held, I have a history of reducing crime. And as the DA, not only did I reduce crime, but I simultaneously reduce incarceration to the point that studies have shown that if other counties were to follow the model of San Francisco, we would end mass incarceration in this country within a year. I send people to prison at 1/4 the rate that Jackie Lacey does, yet LA County has seen a 30% increase in violent crime, while violent crime went down when I was a district attorney in San Francisco. Mass incarceration doesn't make us safer. It destroys the fabric of our communities. It destroys budgets. I've also had broad-based support from many community organizations and individuals, and they go through the political spectrum from the left to the right. I protected immigrants when I was in when I was in Mesa. I fought Sheriff Joe Arpaio to ensure that he was not singling out immigrants and making and abusing their civil rights. I went to Congress to provide testimony against that. I've also prosecuted police officers that engaged in corrupt conduct. At the same time, I protected and support good police officers because I think it's important that we do so. I created the first state independent investigation unit to investigate police use of force and criminal conduct or allegations of criminal conduct by police officers. I was the only district attorney in the state that advocated to reduce the circumstances in which the police can kill. You're going to see and you're going to hear from Ms. Lacey basically an attempt to rewrite history because she has to do. She's gone so far to the right that her major supporters now are people that many of us in our community would not want to be standing next to us. People like Newt Gingrich, a lot of Trump supporters. and the extreme of the police unions. You simply cannot be an agent of change and reform if you don't believe in it. And as district attorney, our current DA has not only opposed every single reform effort that has come through her desk, but she's also protected corruption both in political offices, police officers occasionally, serial sex offenders like Harvey Weinstein. She's simply unable or unwilling to hold people accountable that are powerful. Under her leadership, crime has gone up, incarceration has gone up, and the budget has gone up.
Thank you.
This is not safety. This office is back in the 1990s, and I believe that I can bring a different level of community safety to LA.
Okay, Matt, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. So the first question is, we have two questions that should be queued up. The first one is from Danny M. Danny M., are you unmuted?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, George. Jackie Lacey has allowed over 630 Angelinas to be killed at the hands of police with no repercussion. Will you commit right now in front of Sheriff Villanueva to prosecute his killer cops?
Yeah, Danny, and you're raising an important question that we have seen over and over, the failure of the current DA to hold bad policing accountable. And, you know, frankly, a lot of that has to do with the support that she's getting from police labor. You know, she's gotten over $2.2 million in the primary, and we believe this has been promised somewhere around $4 million for the general election. She is so compromised that she's either unable to do the work or unwilling to do the work. This is the things that I've done. We now have a group of civil rights lawyers that are working with my campaign, and we're identifying potential incidents that require a second look. And I have pledged that we would actually appoint a special prosecutor if there are cases that warrant a prosecution, because I know that many people believe that the district attorney's office cannot handle these cases transparently and without bias. And I agree that we need to start moving that work away from the DA's office. So while I am committed to appointing special prosecutors to do this work on the short term, I also hope that many of you will join hands with me and that we get to Sacramento to be able to create new legislation that would allow the county to create a separate body that will investigate police shootings, police allegations of violations of the law under the Colorado Authority, because I think it's important that we create a separation.
All right. Yeah, the last question that we have is from Rudy. I can't, Melendez. Rudy, are you unmuted?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you very much. Candidate Gascon, I wanted to find out what your position is on LA County Charter Amendment J.
Yes, Rudy, and thank you for the question. I actually endorse Charter Amendment J. I believe that we need to begin to start taking money away from public safety agencies and begin to be able to build the support and the basis to shift some of the work away from law enforcement into other verticals. So for instance, mental health. You know, police officers, prosecutors, we're not trained to deal with mental health. I think it's important that we begin to pass that work over to public health and mental health experts. I believe that a lot of work that requires social work and social intervention could be better done by people other than police officers and prosecutors. So I think that Proposition J is a thoughtful approach by the LA County supervisors to begin to take some of the money that is currently going towards incarceration and enforcement in areas that we know that incarceration and enforcement doesn't necessarily fix the problem. You can't fix cancer with a hammer, and we certainly cannot fix mental health by putting people in concrete boxes. And you heard the sheriff earlier talk about the problem that we have in the county, often deputies trying to take people into hospital beds for mental health and the inability to do so because of the lack of resources. So yes, I do support Proposition J.
Thank you. And thank you very much. And just for the record, we did ask a couple times District Attorney Jackie Lacey, but she was unable to attend today's meeting. And we thank you very much and good luck.
Thank
Our
you so
next
much. I
person-
appreciate the time and look forward to continuing our dialogue in the future.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Stay healthy and safe, please.
Next person I'd like to introduce is our new captain at Los Angeles Police Department, Van Nuys Division, in charge of patrols. So if you can give us a little of your background and what does it mean to be in charge of patrols?
Good evening, everybody. So Rudy Lopez, got about 30 years coming on with this department in November. I recently have left Metropolitan Division, riding horses or running a unit of horses for about last 4 years, working all over the city. And I'm excited, my first command here as a captain. I've been here in Van Nuys 3 times now. I started back in '91 as a probationer, came back about 8 years later as a sergeant, and I'm back here for my 3rd tour here in Van Nuys. So I have a very good understanding and good knowledge of Van Nuys, and I'm very excited to start working on the problems that we face. I have a strong vested interest to improve Sherman Oaks and Van Nuys. I live in the Valley. My kids work in Sherman Oaks, and I think I want what everybody else wants living in this area is to improve the quality of life that we have here. I was a previous senior lead officer, similar to what your senior lead, Jose Saldana, does, is working with the community to solve problems. So that's what I'm here to do, and my intent is to work hand in hand with you guys, not just the police department to take on the ownership, but to work with the community to solve your problems. I clearly understand what life was here in Sherman Oaks 30 years ago. I remember fondly of the times being able to walk on Ventura Boulevard, having a good meal, and going back to your house without being accosted, and that your car was still there where you parked it. Those times have changed. So I know there's a lot of changes that have occurred in the city, but it's my commitment as your patrol captain to work to help resolve those issues. As a patrol captain, I have about 230 officers and detectives assigned to me. And it's along with the senior lead officers, we will be working hand in hand, getting information through Jose to help hopefully get those problems resolved and make a difference from where we're at now. So that's what I'm about, and hopefully you guys will reach out to me, reach out to Van Nuys Station so we could resolve these problems together.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your being here this evening with us.
Very good.
Next up is our senior lead officer, Jose Saldana. Can you give us an update of what's happening as far as crime in Sherman Oaks?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. By the way, Richard, Officer Charette is here too. He's the acting senior lead officer for the northern part of Sherman Oaks. Well, I'm happy. I mean, even though everything is what's been going on, we're down on our property crime 10% for the southern portion of Sherman Oaks. And I'm going to say also for the northern portion of Sherman Oaks, we're down 21% on property crimes. Yes, we've had a major hike on grand theft autos, and that's just something that has not been normal trend in the past. So that's something that our detectives and our officers are working on. And that's between both the northern part and the southern part of Sherman Oaks, is the grand theft autos has a major increase. Our violent crime, as of course, there's no violent, we don't have any increase on violent crime. We are actually down on our violent crime from last year. We're down 22% from last year. So we're doing pretty good on the southern portion of Sherman Oaks and the northern portion of Sherman Oaks. But, and I like I always said on every single meeting, is lock it high to keep it, you know, make sure our vehicles are, you know, we're leaving valuable stuff in the vehicle. So we need to make sure that, you know, that is not visible to the public. If you want to get Officer Charette also to kind of talk about his side of his section.
Sure. Before we do that, how do people contact you if they have a question or a problem?
They could contact me either by my city cell phone at 818-731-2565, or you could email me at 30853@lapd.online. That's 30853@lapd.online.
Yeah, if James is there, if he could come on and say hello.
Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
So if you could explain to the public, what area you're working on and how people can reach you.
You got it. So I'm the interim senior lead officer for 9A63. That's the northern part of Sherman Oaks. If you're looking at this map, it's that pink area. So I border Officer Saldana's area. And so basically he covered most of the crime that's going on in Sherman Oaks. I'd just like to hit on the importance of Neighborhood Watch. If you'd like to get involved with your Neighborhood Watch in your area, or if you'd like to start up a Neighborhood Watch on your block because there's not one already, please reach out to Officer Saldana or myself and we'll help make that happen. There's no better crime fighting or crime deterrent than a good neighbor. And so to get a hold of me, you can reach me at my city cell phone number of 818-731-2563 or by email at 34622@lapd.online.
Let me ask you a question. What is the most common calls or emails that you get from the public?
Lately, mostly just about the transient encampments and what we can do to clean them up and such. And so Officer Saldana and myself have been working with Field Deputy Brad Fingard to get a cleanup scheduled for those areas, as well as working with LASA to get housing for those transients that want services, that want help.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce next Andy Solomon, Deputy City Attorney.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Solomon. I'm a Deputy City Attorney from the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office. I am your neighborhood prosecutor. I serve the Van Nuys and Sherman Oaks area. I work closely with the senior lead officers and also the captains of the division and any detectives and anyone I can to solve chronic issues that are not solvable by the typical means. Right now, the hot button issues, the two that we've been working on with the two senior lead officers in your area are party houses and some transients that have entrenched themselves in certain areas. We've worked with the City Council office to get cleanups done, as Officer Charette has mentioned. As for the party houses, something that did come up in a meeting yesterday with Officer Charette and I and some community members is make sure if you want the party houses reported, when you call the 877 Ask LAPD non-emergency number, make sure to give the address where the crime is occurring. Because what happens is police then run a log of crimes at a chronic location, and that assists me in potential prosecution. But if you give your address and say, oh, I'm only 2 houses down, it doesn't come up in the computer that way, that there was a call for the problem location. So that's an important thing that I'm going to give Officer Charette credit for that, because he caught that and he advised, but that's something we'd like you all to keep in mind. The best way to reach me is my email address, ANDY, that's my first name, .SOLIMAN @lacity.org.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Brad Fingard.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Brad Fingard, Councilmember Rue's Sherman Oaks Field Deputy. My role is really to do anything and everything related to navigating the bureaucracy of government, whether or not it's a city issue. We can be kind of a one-stop shop and refer you to the appropriate entity and kind of help provide advocacy on your behalf and getting your concerns addressed. So work very closely with Andy, Officer Charette, Officer Saldana, and the other senior lead officers I'm also kind of our homelessness deputy, so I do schedule our encampment services throughout the district. But again, you can contact us with any problem under the sun, and we're more than happy to talk through what next steps can be. Just a couple quick announcements, because we have a couple programs that we're very excited about. Tomorrow, the second session in Councilmember Rue's Women in the Time of COVID-19 program is happening at 11 a.m. It's on domestic violence and homelessness and the intersection thereof during COVID-19. And we also have a small business resource town hall next Thursday, September 24th at 1:30 p.m. If you need to get in touch with me on any of those issues or anything else, you can reach me at brad.fingard@lacity.org or call 213-675-4590. Again, 213-675-4590. Thank you.
A question, what is the most unusual request that has been called into you?
The most unusual request is an Office of Finance property tax assessment issue that actually one of your board members brought to our attention. That's probably the most unusual one that I've gotten recently, unfortunately. And I'm sure Jay can talk to you about that. But an individual got an assessed, was audited by the Office of Finance, and basically the office reinterpreted some of their guidance on that and assessed a small business with a $1.2 million bill, I believe. So our office is working on trying to help that small business out, navigate that, and hopefully make sure that they can stay in business, because that, especially during the crisis that folks are facing during COVID-19, is just too much to bear.
And what is the most common question people ask you?
The most common questions, I would say, are certainly homelessness, FAA-related questions, the Federal Aviation Administration. Obviously, there's been a lot going on with that. And then prior to COVID-19, I would say certainly traffic and transportation issues, but that has certainly declined quite a bit. But, you know, tree trimming, pothole repair, we're happy to help with all of those issues as well.
Thank you very much. Next up is Gordon Morris from the Pavilions.
Hey everyone, happy to see you all and welcome us back to the neighborhood. After all these years, I'm happy to bring some good news. We are open as of today at 9 a.m. We did our ribbon cutting ceremony. We are so happy that we are able to give back to the community. This morning, $10,000 checks went out to the Homeowners Association of Sherman Oaks, North Hollywood Interface Food Pantry, and the Kester Avenue Elementary School, as well as other things. If you ever need any assistance, please come and visit me, Gordon. I have an office right by the guest services at the concierge area. And it's a lot different than it was previously. It's been 4 years, 3 years in the making, and yeah, stop by and see us. And we can actually do anything custom to your needs. So just stop in, visit us, and it would be a really great thing. Any questions, please feel free.
When are you generally at the store?
I am at the store from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and I am there to facilitate any needs. Catering, any type of business needs you may need, and basically every part of the development of the store and all of their departments. So yeah, everything is, the sky is the limit with us. We have a chocolatier, we have a cheese specialist, our wine selection for the community is unbelievable for what's going on. So yeah, stop in and see us. And we're so happy to be able to give back once again to the community, because we know that the Homeowners Association is able to give back to the community. And after all these years of being vacant and building this project, we are so happy to be able to be open and give back and provide all the jobs that we have for the community.
And just so management knows that the reason we have been promoting recently the new pavilions is the company has made a sizable investment in Sherman Oaks in a very competitive market with quotes around it, with the Gelsons and Ralphs. So, you know, we welcome the belief by Albertsons, the owners of the pavilion, that Sherman Oaks is the place to invest money in reopening the store. So we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we appreciate the community. And that's why everybody stop in. And if you ever have any needs, stop in and visit me, Gordon. I have my office up by the guest services. And we are so happy. Anything we can do for the community, we are so happy to give back because we're blessed to be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Maria. Big celebration. We had the celebration at Pavilions this morning. And now, Maria, can you explain to the people why we're celebrating and what we're celebrating?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we certainly are celebrating because we're pleased with the results of the legislation that was trying to go through Sacramento. Of the 5 bills we fought, only one is going forward to the governor, and that one has been amended substantially, so we didn't find it to be a threat to single-family neighborhoods. The housing bills are going to come back, and what we want to make everyone understand is the fight is not between homeowners versus renters. The fight is homeowners and renters versus land speculators, big business, and real estate interests that are trying to deregulate zoning protections so they can build more housing that suits them and has no affordable component. So with that, I want to say thank you to 3 people. Adrin Nazarian, who at the night of the vote stood up and defended single-family neighborhoods amazingly, to the extent that he spoke of the 10,000 units of housing that were bought by land speculators during the recession and are holding these as rental houses, and would love bills like this that keep adding more housing on small lots. Another thank you to David Rue, because he introduced the resolution to oppose the splitting of lots 1120. And not many people stood up for that in our local government. So it's important to know who it is that supports us. And another thank you to every one of you who wrote and sent emails. We tried to do a statewide initiative, call in to all our senators and assemblymen, and we ended up getting thousands of emails as a result of that. So a lot of our assembly people were forced to stay back and listen to the problems and the concerns we all had. We as a committee are continuing to try to be part of the solution. So we're working on ideas that we will work with South LA and other communities to get their input, and then present to our assembly members and senators to see if we can get some good housing ideas that don't always ruin single-family neighborhoods. So always our thank yous to everybody. We'll be back, but for right now, I think I'm done for a while.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Bob Anderson on the proposal to build a subway above Sherman Oaks. Bob?
Hi, Richard. Hi, everyone. I am trying to figure out how to get my screen to work. Zoom changed something for a while. I talk about the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project, the high-speed transit going from Van Nuys all the way down to LAX eventually. There is a lot going on right now. I'm not going to try to explain it to you because every time I do, everybody just gets a little more confused. Metro has not been super transparent with all this. Instead, I'm going to direct you to the Studio City, Sherman Oaks, and Encino News. You'll see a picture of a monorail running on the top of that newspaper. I was the author of that article, and I tried to, in a page, explain what was going on in a simple way without a lot of jargon so people could understand it. I've gotten a lot of very positive reviews from people telling me, thank you, I finally understand what's going on. SOHA is going to email a e-blast, a reprint of the article to everyone on our mail list early next week. And if you have any questions that you want to know about it, my email address is at the bottom of that article. It is bobhillsideordinance@roadrunner.com, from when I used to work on the Hillside Ordinance. And I can try to keep you up to date. We're going to be able to make comments on some of the new concepts. There's some exciting things going on. And thank you all for your support when we ask for it, sending letters to Metro. The other day I said something and they said, we know what Sherman Oaks wants. We know what they don't want. Please don't send any more letters. So that's a great sign. We'll send a lot more letters. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that wraps up the meeting tonight. Our next meeting is the third Wednesday in October. It'll be a debate for City Council between David Rue and Nithya Raman and Phil Schuman from Fox News, Channel 11, will be the moderator. So it should be an exciting meeting. Third Wednesday of next month, 7:15 p.m. With that, we wish you well. Take care, and we'll see you in a month. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.